The sun had barely risen when Keanu Reeves stepped out onto the quiet street, his heart pounding as he cradled Apollo in his arms. The golden retriever mix whimpered softly, his breathing labored. Keanu could feel the tremors in the dog's body, and panic surged through him. Apollo had been fine just yesterday, eagerly wagging his tail, full of life. Now, he was weak, barely able to lift his head. Keanu knew he had to act fast. He had rescued Apollo from an abusive situation just a few months ago, and in that short time, the dog had become family. The thought of losing him was unbearable. Without a second thought, Keanu rushed down the street toward the nearest veterinary clinic. BrightCare Animal Hospital, a sleek, modern building known for its top-tier services. As he reached the entrance, Keanu pushed open the glass doors with his shoulder, carefully balancing Apollo's weight in his arms. The cool blast of air-conditioned air hit his face, but he barely noticed. He was met with a pristine waiting area, complete with marble floors, cushioned chairs, and a faint scent of antiseptic. Behind the reception desk sat a woman with meticulously curled blonde hair and a name tag that read, Linda. "Please," Keanu gasped, his voice strained. "My dog. He's having trouble breathing. I need a vet. Now." Linda barely spared him a glance, instead tapping her manicured nails against the keyboard. She looked him up and down, taking in his disheveled hoodie, faded jeans, and scuffed boots. To her, he was just another scruffy-looking man off the street. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her voice clipped. Keanu's jaw tightened. "No, it's an emergency. He's getting worse." Linda sighed dramatically and motioned toward the waiting area. "Fill out the paperwork and we'll see if a vet has time." Keanu shifted Apollo in his arms, his frustration mounting. "I don't have time for paperwork. He needs help now." Linda narrowed her eyes. "Sir, we have a policy. No appointment, no immediate service. And just so you know, emergency treatment starts at $500. Keanu was stunned. He wasn't worried about the money. He would pay any price to save Apollo. But the callousness in Linda's voice sent a chill down his spine. "I'll pay," he said firmly. "Just get someone out here." Before Linda could reply, a deep voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me. Is there a problem here?" Keanu turned to see a tall, broad-shouldered man in scrubs approaching. His name tag read, Dr. James Porter. His sharp eyes assessed the situation, but instead of concern, Keanu saw something else. Annoyance. "This man is being disruptive," Linda said, arms crossed. "He walked in without an appointment and is demanding emergency treatment without filling out the proper forms." Keanu took a step forward, his grip on Apollo tightening. "Please, I don't care about forms. My dog is struggling to breathe. Just take a look at him." Dr. Porter exhaled through his nose, clearly irritated. "Sir, we have high-profile clients waiting. We can't bump their appointments for a walk-in, especially if you can't even prove you can pay." Keanu blinked, momentarily stunned by the blatant assumption. His clothes weren't fancy, his face was unshaven, and his hair was tousled, but this was beyond unfair. "I already said I'd pay," Keanu stated, his voice dangerously calm. "Do you really refuse to treat animals based on how their owners look?" Dr. Porter smirked. "We refuse to treat people who waste our time. If you can't follow protocol, you can take your dog somewhere else." Linda snickered. "Try a low-cost clinic. This isn't a charity." Keanu felt his heart hammer in his chest. He had never been turned away like this before. Apollo let out a weak whimper, breaking his train of thought. He had no time to argue. He needed to get his dog help. Now. Taking a deep breath, Keanu turned on his heel, pushing past the clinic doors. He had no idea that within hours these people would be begging for his forgiveness. Keanu's mind raced as he stepped out of BrightCare Animal Hospital, Apollo still limp in his arms. His heart pounded and frustration burned in his chest. How could they refuse to help? The morning sun had fully risen now, casting a golden glow over the street, but Keanu hardly noticed. He scanned his surroundings, searching desperately for another vet clinic. Apollo needed help. Now. As he started down the sidewalk, a voice called out, "Hey, are you okay?" Keanu turned to see a woman in her early 30s jogging toward him, her brown ponytail swinging. She had a small, alert terrier on a leash. Her face showed genuine concern. "My dog!" Keanu's voice cracked. He swallowed hard, trying to steady himself. He's struggling to breathe. The vet refused to treat him. The woman's eyes widened. "What? Why?" Keanu exhaled sharply. "They assumed I couldn't pay. Told me to leave." Her expression shifted from shock to outrage. "That's disgusting. There's another clinic a few blocks away. Come on, I'll drive you." Relief flooded Keanu. "Thank you." She unlocked her car, a slightly beat-up blue SUV, and opened the passenger door. Keanu carefully placed Apollo onto the seat, stroking his fur gently. "What's his name?" she asked as she climbed into the driver's seat. "Apollo?" Keanu murmured, glancing at the dog with worry. The woman smiled. "That's a strong name. I'm Emily, by the way." "Keanu?" he replied absent-mindedly, his focus entirely on Apollo. As Emily pulled into traffic, she muttered, "Can't believe they treated you like that. It's illegal to refuse an animal in an emergency, isn't it?" Keanu let out a bitter chuckle. Apparently, rules don't apply to the rich and arrogant. Emily's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "I hope that vet gets what's coming to him." Minutes later, Emily pulled up in front of a small, unassuming clinic. The sign above the door read, "Second Chance Veterinary Care." Keanu wasted no time. He gently lifted Apollo and rushed inside. A bell chimed as they entered, and a warm, welcoming voice greeted them. "Hello, is he okay?" A middle-aged man with kind eyes and graying hair rushed out from behind the counter. His name tag read, Luis Ramirez. "He's having trouble breathing," Keanu said urgently. "It started this morning. I think it might be an allergic reaction." Dr. Ramirez immediately gestured to an exam table. "Lay him here." Keanu placed Apollo down, watching as the vet quickly assessed him. "Braided," Dr. Ramirez muttered, placing an oxygen mask gently over Apollo's snout. "His heart rate is high. We need to stabilize him immediately." Keanu felt a wave of relief. Finally, someone was listening. Emily stood beside him, arms crossed. "This is how a real vet acts. Not like those jerks at BrightCare." Dr. Ramirez glanced up sharply. "Wait, BrightCare turned you away?" Keanu nodded. "Told me I didn't look like I could afford it." Dr. Ramirez's jaw tightened. "That place is all about profit. They've turned away too many animals." He adjusted Apollo's IV drip, his movements gentle but firm. "But we take a different approach here. No animal should suffer because of money." Keanu exhaled slowly, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "Thank you. You don't know how much this means." Dr. Ramirez smiled. "It's what I'm here for." Keanu sat by Apollo's side, stroking his fur as the oxygen mask helped his breathing. Emily scrolled on her phone beside him, muttering under her breath. Then she suddenly gasped. "Oh my God." Keanu glanced at her. "What?" She turned her phone toward him. "Someone filmed what happened at BrightCare. It's all over social media." Keanu frowned, leaning closer. The video showed Linda's cold indifference, Dr. Porter's arrogance, and Keanu being forced out while Apollo whimpered in his arms. The caption read, "Vet refuses to treat a dying dog, then learns who the owner really is." It had already amassed millions of views. Keanu ran a hand through his hair. "Great," Emily smirked. "Actually, this might work in your favor." Before Keanu could respond, his phone vibrated. A number he didn't recognize flashed across the screen. Against his better judgment, he answered. "It was Mr. Reeves. This is Dr. Porter, from BrightCare." Keanu stiffened. Dr. Porter's voice was now desperate, panicked. I want to apologize. We had no idea it was you. Please, let us make this right." Keanu's lips curled into a humorless smile. Now they cared. But it was far too late. Keanu stared at his phone. Dr. Porter's voice crackling through the speaker. "Now he wants to apologize. The irony wasn't lost on him. Hours ago, Porter had dismissed Apollo's suffering, treating Keanu like he was nothing, but now that the world had seen the truth, he was desperate to save face. "Mr. Reeves, please," Porter continued, his voice trembling. I made a terrible mistake. If I had known who you were..." Keanu's grip on the phone tightened. "That's the problem," he cut in, his voice controlled but firm. "You should treat every pet with the same urgency, regardless of who owns them, not just celebrities." Emily, sitting beside him, raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess," she muttered. "Now that the internet's ripping them apart, they suddenly found their conscience?" Keanu half smiled, but kept his focus on the call. "Mr. Reeves, I swear," Porter said hurriedly. "This isn't how we normally operate. Linda, our receptionist, she misunderstood protocol and I was overwhelmed. I want to make it up to you. Free treatment for Apollo, a public apology, anything." Keanu leaned back in his chair, glancing at Apollo. The golden retriever mix was resting comfortably now, thanks to Dr. Ramirez's care. That's what mattered. But he wasn't going to let BrightCare off the hook so easily. "You don't owe me anything," Keanu said, his voice steady. "But you do owe an apology to every pet owner you've turned away, and I'm not talking about a press release." Porter hesitated. What do you mean?" Keanu's jaw set. "You're going to change your policies. Publicly. No more turning away emergency cases. No more prioritizing money over lives. And you're going to fund vet care for low NKP owners. Permanently." A strangled sound came through the line, Porter choking on his own greed. That's a lot to ask," he stammered. Keanu scoffed. "You don't have a choice. You saw the video. The world is watching." Emily grinned. "Check this out," she said, holding up her phone. The hashtag boycott BrightCare was trending worldwide. News outlets had already picked up the story, with headlines like, "Hollywood star Keanu Reeves denied vet care. Clinic faces backlash. Vet turns away dog in need. Internet demands justice. Keanu Reeves fights for animal rights. Will BrightCare survive?" Porter must have seen it too because his voice wavered. "All right," he said weakly. I'll do it." Keanu nodded to himself. Good. "But there was still one more thing. One last condition," he said. Porter groaned. "What now?" Keanu's voice was like steel. "Fire Linda." A pause. "She was just doing her job," Porter said feebly. "No," Keanu corrected. "She was doing your job. Gatekeeping healthcare based on who looks wealthy enough. If you want to prove that BrightCare is changing, start with accountability." Another long silence. "Fine," Porter muttered. "She's gone." Keanu exhaled. "Then we have a deal." Porter mumbled something about drafting an apology and hung up. Keanu set his phone down and let out a deep breath. Emily clapped her hands together. "And that's how you take down corrupt businesses." Keanu gave a small smile, but inside he wasn't celebrating. Apollo had suffered because of people like Porter and Linda, and for every Keanu Reeves who could expose them, there were thousands of pet owners who couldn't. This wasn't over. Dr. Ramirez walked in, wiping his hands on a towel. "Apollo's vitals are strong," he reported. "His reaction was severe, but with the meds, he should be fully stable in a few hours." Keanu let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Thank you," he said sincerely. Ramirez smiled. "No thanks needed, just doing my job." Keanu studied the older man. "You run this clinic differently." Ramirez chuckled. "BrightCare started as a good clinic once, but then greed took over. I left when they stopped putting animals first." He shook his head. "I see it all the time. Pet owners come in, desperate, but if they don't have enough cash, they're turned away." His expression darkened. "And their pets suffer for it." Keanu nodded slowly. The system was broken, and now that he had seen it firsthand, he couldn't just walk away. His mind whirled with ideas. He had the resources, the connections. What if he started his own initiative? a network of low-cost, no-refusal veterinary clinics for emergency care. Keanu met Ramirez's gaze. What if we change that? Ramirez's eyebrows raised. How do you mean? Keanu leaned forward. What if we built something better? A place where money isn't the first question, where every pet gets the treatment they need. Ramirez exhaled slowly. That's a big dream. Keanu's lips quirked. I like big dreams. Emily gasped dramatically. Are you saying Keanu Reeves is about to fix veterinary care? He smirked. Maybe. A few hours later, after Apollo had stabilized, Keanu stood outside the clinic with Emily and Ramirez, discussing their next steps. The media storm was still raging, but Keanu had a bigger mission now. A sleek black car pulled up, stopping just in front of them. The door opened, and a well-dressed woman stepped out. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she approached. Keanu tensed. He recognized her immediately. Veronica Hayes, CEO of BrightCare. Ramirez's eyes narrowed. What's she doing here? Emily whispered. She looks like she eats assistants for breakfast. Veronica crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. Mr. Reeves. Keanu's posture remained relaxed, but his eyes were sharp. Miss Hayes. She studied him. You've put us in a very difficult position. Keanu shrugged. You put yourselves there. A small smile ghosted across her lips. Fair enough. She glanced at the clinic. I've come with a proposal. Emily snorted. Let me guess. Damage control? Veronica ignored her. BrightCare is willing to offer full funding for your new initiative. A joint venture. Keanu blinked, caught off guard. Was she serious? Ramirez looked skeptical. What's the catch? Veronica met Keanu's gaze, her expression challenging. You run it, but under BrightCare's name. The air grew heavy. Keanu had two choices: reject her and fight alone, or accept and risk corporate interference. His fingers brushed Apollo's fur. He glanced at Ramirez, then back at Veronica. His decision would change everything. The tension between Keanu and Veronica Hayes was thick enough to cut with a knife. The CEO of BrightCare had just offered him a deal. Full funding for his veterinary initiative, but under their corporate name. Keanu could feel Emily's eyes burning into the side of his face, silently screaming, "Don't trust her." Dr. Ramirez stood a step behind him, arms crossed, his skepticism evident. And yet Keanu didn't answer immediately. He let the weight of the moment settle, studying Veronica. Her posture was confident, controlled, like someone used to winning negotiations before they even began. But there was something else in her eyes. Worry. BrightCare was in trouble. Their brand was on fire, and she was here because Keanu was the only one who could help put it out. He exhaled slowly. You want to back my initiative, but under BrightCare's name? Veronica nodded. Yes. We'll provide the funding, resources, and network. You'll oversee operations and ensure it runs the way you envision. Keanu smirked, and in return, BrightCare gets a PR makeover. She didn't even flinch. We get a second chance to prove we're not the villains the internet has painted us to be. Emily let out a sharp laugh. Oh, so you admit you're villains. Veronica shot her a glance, but remained composed. I admit that mistakes were made, but you and I both know that real change doesn't happen overnight. If we can build something that helps thousands of animals, does it really matter what name is on the sign? Keanu tilted his head slightly. She was good. This was the logical choice. Access to money, facilities, and staff. BrightCare already had an infrastructure that could expand this initiative far faster than Keanu could on his own. But logic wasn't the only thing that mattered. Keanu turned to Dr. Ramirez. What do you think? The older vet hesitated, rubbing his chin. If they're serious, this could be life-changing for countless pets. But if it's just a PR stunt, they'll drop it the moment the media stops watching. Veronica's lips pressed into a thin line. This is not a stunt, Emily scoffed. Right, and pigs fly. Keanu chuckled softly. Emily wasn't wrong to be wary. He met Veronica's gaze. I won't be a puppet for your rebranding campaign. She exhaled. I don't expect you to be. And I need control, Keanu continued. This initiative runs independently. No corporate red tape, no price hikes, and no turning animals away, ever. Veronica hesitated. We'd need to discuss the specifics. No. Keanu's voice was firm. This isn't up for discussion. Either BrightCare commits to real change, or I walk. Silence. Veronica studied him carefully. Then, to everyone's shock, she extended her hand. Fine, she said. You have full control. Keanu stared at her hand, surprised she had caved so easily. Too easily. He clasped it, shaking firmly, but in the back of his mind he wondered, had he just made a deal with the devil? That evening, Keanu sat in Dr. Ramirez's small office, Apollo curled up at his feet. The golden retriever mix was already looking much better, his breathing steady, his body relaxed. Emily paced in front of Keanu's desk. I don't like this, she muttered. You don't like a lot of things, Keanu teased. Emily shot him a glare. And I'm usually right. Dr. Ramirez sighed. She has a point. BrightCare is a massive corporation. You really think they'll let you run this initiative without trying to influence things? Keanu leaned back, thoughtful. They're desperate right now. They'll give me whatever I ask for, at least in the beginning. And after that, Emily pressed. Keanu exhaled. Then we make sure the public is invested. If people see how much this is helping animals, BrightCare won't be able to back out without another PR disaster. Ramirez whistled. You're playing a dangerous game, Keanu. Keanu shrugged. The stakes are worth it. Emily groaned, flopping onto the couch. Fine, but when this all blows up, I will say, I told you so. Keanu smirked. Wouldn't expect anything less. The next day, Keanu's partnership with BrightCare was officially announced. News outlets jumped on the story, reporting how Keanu Reeves was revolutionizing vet care with a corporate sponsor. The internet was divided. Some people called it a victory, a rare moment where public outrage actually forced real change. Others were skeptical, warning that BrightCare would eventually find a way to take control. Keanu ignored the noise. He had work to do. He spent the next few days finalizing contracts, scouting locations, and hiring staff. With BrightCare's money and Keanu's influence, things moved fast. But then the first problem hit. Late one night, Keanu received an anonymous email. Subjective, you're making a mistake. Body, BrightCare doesn't care about animals. They're just using you, don't trust them. If you dig deeper, you'll find out why. Keanu frowned. The email had no signature, no sender name, just a link. He hesitated before clicking. The page that loaded made his stomach drop. It was a leaked internal document from BrightCare, and it proved that Veronica had been lying. Keanu stared at the leaked document on his screen, his chest tightening. The words in front of him confirmed his worst fears. BrightCare's initiative was a sham. The document outlined their real plan to quietly phase out Keanu's control once public attention died down. They would introduce necessary cost adjustments, a fancy term for price hikes, then limit free treatments until only a fraction of pets actually received help. They never intended to change. Keanu exhaled, his fingers gripping the desk. He had trusted Veronica, or at least given her the benefit of the doubt, but now he was done playing nice. A soft whimper brought him back to the present. Apollo nudged his leg, sensing his tension. Keanu ran a hand through the golden retriever mix's fur, grounding himself. He had to act fast. His phone rang. Emily. I assume you saw the email, she asked, her voice sharp. Yeah, Keanu muttered. We need to move. I'm already ahead of you, she said. Meet me at Ramirez's clinic. We have work to do. Keanu grabbed his jacket, gave Apollo a reassuring pat, and strode out the door. At Second Chance Vet Clinic, Emily had her laptop open, screens filled with documents, news reports, and social media feeds. Ramirez stood beside her, arms crossed, his face set in grim determination. They're gonna bury this, Ramirez said, BrightCare has money, lawyers, and PR teams. If we don't do this right, they'll turn you into the villain. Keanu nodded. We need to control the story. Emily smirked. I thought you'd say that. She turned her laptop around. On the screen was a scheduled live stream announcement. We're taking this to the public, she said. But not just with accusations. We're going to hit them where it hurts. With proof. Keanu scanned the information she had compiled. Financial records, leaked emails, employee testimonies. It was airtight. Undeniable. His lips curled into a determined smirk. Let's do it. The next morning, the world watched as Keanu Reeves went live on social media. He sat in Dr. Ramirez's clinic, Apollo lying at his feet. Emily and Ramirez sat beside him. With a deep breath, Keanu spoke. A few days ago, BrightCare refused to treat my dog Apollo because I didn't look like I could afford it. That moment opened my eyes to a larger problem. How many pets are denied care because their owners don't have money up front? I believed I could change that. I partnered with BrightCare to create something new, a vet initiative that would provide emergency care for all animals, regardless of finances. I was promised full control. He paused, his jaw tightening. They lied. He pulled up the leaked document, reading aloud the section about limiting free treatments, pushing price hikes, and phasing him out. BrightCare was never interested in helping animals. They were interested in using me to make themselves look good, while still prioritizing profit over lives. Emily leaned in. And we have receipts. She began scrolling through emails, internal memos, and hidden policies. The audience watching exploded. Shutdown BrightCare began trending within minutes. Keanu took a deep breath. Here's what happens next. I am cutting all ties with BrightCare, but this mission isn't over. I won't let them win, and I won't let money be the reason an animal dies. That's why, with the help of Dr. Ramirez and a growing team of real animal advocates, I am launching a new independent vet initiative, one that can't be corrupted by greed. And to anyone at BrightCare who still believes in this mission, walk away now, because this company is about to face consequences. He leaned back, looking directly into the camera. Veronica Hayes, I know you're watching. You have two options: step down or be dragged down. The aftermath was instant chaos. Major news outlets picked up the story. Former BrightCare employees came forward with horror stories. The company's stock plummeted within hours. Sponsors pulled funding, and then the final blow. Veronica Hayes released a statement that evening. Effective immediately, I am resigning as CEO of BrightCare. The company was in free fall. Keanu had won. A week later, Keanu stood outside a newly purchased clinic, the first location of his independent vet initiative, a place where no pet would be turned away. Emily and Ramirez stood beside him. You did it, Ramirez said, admiration in his voice. Keanu shook his head. We did it. Apollo barked happily, wagging his tail. Emily smirked. So, when do we open? Keanu looked at the new sign being placed above the door. It read, Pods, Apollo's Hope Veterinary Center. He smiled. Right now.